Good evening. Let's call this meeting to order. Ms. Henry, could you call the roll?
Ms. Sonier.
Present.
Ms. Fowler. Ms. Val.
Present.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Cousins.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item on the agenda is the Spirit of Excellence. Tonight, the Spirit of Excellence spotlights Ms. Catherine Hund, art teacher from Melanphy Elementary. Ms. Hund has been chosen as the St. Louis Post-Dispatch May Teacher of the Month. She will receive a $250 Target gift card and will be featured in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and on STL Today on May 15th. Ms. Hund will also be featured in an upcoming article published in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She was nominated by her colleague, Ms. Jennifer Campbell Dormer. Catherine is an innovative art teacher that wants to help kids discover their talents. She deserves to win this prize because she gives every ounce of her energy to the kids that walk through her doors. I am proud to call Catherine a friend and a colleague. Ms. Hund, thank you so much for your dedication to your professionalism and to your students. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, April 8th, 2022. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve April 8th, 2022 minutes.
I'll second. Any discussion? Ms. Henry.
Ms. Sonier.
Yes.
Ms. Val.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Dr. Adams.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the Educators for Gun Safety Lock giveaway that was held at Vashon High School this Saturday. Between that event and the SLPS presence at the city Cinco de Mayo Festival, we were able to pass out over 100 gun locks. Special thanks to the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and Women Voices Raised for Social Justice for joining us at Vashon. The next Educator for Gun Safety Gun Lock giveaway will take place this Saturday at Confluence Aspire Academy from 11 until 1 o'clock. The police department, as well as all educators in the city, have been strong partners in terms of getting information out to try to make sure that students and families understand that there is a way to protect their children by having a lock on their guns. In addition to that, the next announcement, the time is near. In a few short weeks, it will be time to celebrate our 2020-22 graduation graduates. Graduation ceremonies have returned to individual schools this year. To keep up with the class of 2022 graduation updates, visit www.slps.org/class of 2022. We are proud of all of the students who are in the process of graduating, some 1,200 students this school year. At this point in time, we have several presentations. We'll start with the financial presentation by Mrs. Banks. She has a budget presentation in addition to the quarterly update at this point in time and a budget amendment. Mrs. Banks.
Thank you. As Dr. Adams mentioned, I've got 3 quick presentations. You know, we have changed from monthly financials to quarterly financials. So this will be the first time for the quarterly. And this covers January through March 2022. So we have our standard financial objectives. And as we look at our agenda, we will be going through an ESSER update as well as an ESSER year-to-date spend, the quarterly results for the year, and onto a financial outlook. So for our update, we have received some additional funds from ESSER or ARP, including some E-rate funds that have been approved. There was a new window that was opened on April 28th, and we were awarded funds for additional replacement iPads and high school laptop replacements in the tune of about $5.4 million. Additionally, we received $100,000 from ESSER 3 funds for homeless, which will support our students in transition program. $2 million for 2 DESI grants approved for teacher recruitment and retention, which HR will be able to use over the next 2 years. Our ESSER 2 spend to date, and this is through March 31st, 2022. As you can see, year to date, we have spent about $7.8 million, or about 18% of the funds. And you can see the categories. Not surprising, student learning is at the top, followed by safe return. Now, in addition to the $7.8 million that have been spent, funds out the door, we have also encumbered about $9.8 million that are targeted for specific vendors and purchases. The balance of the funds not used this year will roll over and can be used in next year, fiscal year 2023. So on to our Q3 preliminary results. Looking at our revenue, no surprise, same items, property and sales taxes, state aid, food service, and some federal reimbursements. In addition, we received an emergency operational cost reimbursement, about $1.4 million, and that was for food service. You may recall that last year we had a big gap in our revenues. Our expenditures over $100,000, a lot of the same players. You'll see these repeated through the rest of the year. Nothing new here. So when you look at the revenues overall for Q3, we received $175.4 million. That's about 74.5% of our revenue budget. And of course, the majority of those funds are in the local revenues. We've received almost 94% of our local revenues to date. Our expenditures, Q3, we received $112.3 million. Year to date, about 59% of the expenditure budget. You can see that salaries and benefits are pretty much hand in hand. Of course, purchase services and supplies and materials are much lower. We anticipate we're not going to spend that amount of budget, and a lot of that is the ESSER 2 funds, which will roll over to the next fiscal year. Of course, our financial outlook continues to be strong as we look at risks and opportunities that are on the horizon, but things are looking good. Any questions before I proceed to the proposed 22-23 budget? Okay, well, this is our final budget for 22-23. As you recall, we presented our proposed budgets at the April 26th work session. We put a link to the detailed budget that's posted on our website. We opened up a public comment period for about 10 days. We didn't receive any comments. Therefore, we are maintaining the budget that was presented on April 26th and seeking approval tonight. And just as a reminder, this is the summary for all budgets for fiscal year 2023. $478.9 million in revenues, $469.2 million in expenditures. Both revenues and expenditures are going up quite a bit, as you can anticipate from the ESSER 3 funds. Questions regarding the proposed 22-23 budget? If not, the final presentation is the current year, fiscal year 21-22 general operating budget amendment. After receiving the E-rate award, we knew we needed to do a budget amendment to make sure that we had the capacity to spend those funds this year. And that's what this short presentation is about. Per board or per DESI regulations, the budget must be approved before the actual expenditures exceed that budget. And that's what we're doing right now, just to make sure that there's capacity in the budget and that we maintain compliance with state regulations. The budget amendment also must be noted in the board minutes. So what are we looking for with the GOB budget amendment? Well, revenues are not required to be included in a budget amendment if you exceed your budget. But as we've talked about all year, there's been lots of additional revenue that we hadn't originally budgeted for. So we thought we would also include the additional revenues, which include primarily sales taxes, Proposition C, which is an education tax, which comes through DESI, $4 million. Our DSEG sales tax, $9 million. And then we have a lot of additional state aid revenue this year, as we've talked about. The state revenue was very positive this year, so much of that flowed out to the districts. The E-rate we just talked about is about $7 million, so that will be about $7 million in E-rate reimbursements. So our original GOB revenue budget was $287 million, and from this amendment, $30 million will increase the total GOB revenues to $317 million. Similarly, with our GOB expenditure budget, it was $287 million. We are seeking to amend that budget by $16 million, which will include E-rate expenditures, which are the iPads and laptops that I discussed, $7 million. Utilities, we're seeking $4 million to add to the budget. And a lot of that is just based on the energy costs. And we also did not anticipate, after we closed 6 buildings, that we would have such high costs. Transportation, very similar, $5 million. After the year, last year, our transportation expenditures were not budgeted as high as it appears we will expend this year. So our 287 approved GOB expenditure budget plus the $16 million to amend the budget will take our total GOB expenditures to $303 million. So if the amendment is approved, the detailed amendment will look very similar to the fiscal year 2023 detailed budget that was linked after the April 26th meeting on the website. However, it will be for the current year, fiscal year 21-22. It will include the actuals through April of 2022 with projections through the end of the year, including the amended sums that we are requesting. That concludes my presentations, and I will certainly entertain any questions from any of the presentations.
Ms. Banks, will you need the amendment approved prior to the budget for next school year first?
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
would hope to have it approved at the June meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Banks, as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Technology presentation at this point in time, Mrs. Vanoy did not present at the last meeting. So Ms. Vanoy. She'll provide an update around technology as well as assessment, as we have one more week prior to the map assessment completion.
Tonight, I would like to do a recap of our technology, provide some additional information on the E-rate status, share any current or future projects that we're working on, and then as Dr. Adams discussed, share some assessment work that's currently going. Since COVID-19, we had to make some significant changes with our firewall to make sure that we had the bandwidth to be able to simultaneously have students interacting virtually. So we replaced that. The firewall is a requirement of E-rate in that we have to be what they call SIPA compliant, which is Child Internet Protection Act. We also doubled our internet speed out to the world during that time, and we also had to upgrade our edge router, which applies more connections to the outside world at the same time. It had caused some latency issues prior to that, so we want to make sure that we could handle all of the connectivity. From a technology distribution standpoint for this school year, this is the second complete year that we've distributed iPads to our pre-K to 8th grade students, and our high school students 9 through 12 received Dell laptops. With the purchase of the 12,000 iPads last summer, we added the LTE or data hotspot internally into the iPad. So this would keep families from having to keep track of the iPad device and also the hotspot as a separate unit. We do continue to provide hotspots to high school students because the Dell laptops do not have an internal LTE device. The new funding source through E-rate, or ECF, which is Emergency Connectivity Fund, provides 100% reimbursement on data needs. We continue to work with all of our families who did not return devices from the 2021 school year. While we're proud of our work so far, we did receive 87% back. We continue to work on the remaining 13%. All devices are currently locked that we do not have in our possession, and we can track the location if they're connected to the internet. Then we work with security to retrieve and/or discuss with the families to bring it back. In the past 3 weeks, almost 10 devices have been mailed back to us. In fact, Southwest Airlines reached out to us last Tuesday and mailed a laptop back. So we're constantly getting things back in the mail because it's locked. Currently, 89% of our active students have a district device. Families, of course, can opt out, and that's about 3% of the families that don't want to have their own device from the school. They will have a device in school to use, but they don't take it back and forth. We have about 5% that haven't returned their devices from last year, and we have another 3% that are using on-site devices only. So if they didn't return their device from last year, they have one to use in the classroom, but they don't take it back and forth. For the current year, we have about 1,270 broken or lost devices on our technology log. They can also be lost and or stolen. Of this number, 34.6% have already cleared their fines completely. We have 12% that are on a payment plan. And once they clear their record and or start a payment plan, they can receive a new device. And we're working on the remaining 53% for a complete resolution. The loss label is an interesting situation and one that we have found clears very quickly. We have reports from our technology inventory coordinators, which are the individuals in the individual school who distribute the equipment. They will call us and say, we think this iPad is in the school, but we can't find it. So we'll lock it and we make it make a sound and they immediately find it. As of 3 weeks ago, there were 35 reported lost in one day, and we had them all back by the end of the day. With the ESSER 2 monies that Angie talked about, dedicated to the technology department, we are in the process of replacing all Promethean and our smart boards in every classroom. We're removing the outdated boards with ceiling mounts and our short throws and replacing them with a flat screen model similar to TVs. These do not have bulbs, they do not have to be calibrated, and will not have projectors that fail. We're anticipating 90% complete as of today with our current funding, and we anticipate we will only need a small amount of the ESSER 3 funding to make that be 100% for 2022-23. We're currently working with Worldwide Technology on a complete refresh of our Wi-Fi appliances that were installed in 2012. So we have a Wi-Fi appliance in every classroom and every common area. There's 2,800 devices across the district, and they're staged off-site in the Worldwide Technology warehouse. So when they're brought on-site, it's a simple removal of the appliance, a plug-in of the new appliance, and everything connects immediately. We're currently about 60% complete on this project. We anticipate will be completed by June 9th. There was a delay in starting the project, if you remember, because we couldn't get the equipment in time. This is 85% funded through E-rate, and we pay the remaining 15%. We also have a timeline for the 2021-22 technology retrieval. It's actually going to start Monday, May 16th. And for this year, we're not going to be sending equipment home for summer school. Summer school is June 6th through June 30th with 1 day off for Juneteenth. So we need to get all the equipment back so that we can work on the new equipment that's coming in, as Angie talked about, with the 5,151 laptops and 8,600 iPads. We're also ordering new bezels, which are the colors that go around the iPads, because the color means the grade level you're in. So depending on the grade level, you might have purple or green or yellow. And that way we can quickly identify which iPad is for what grade level. From a federal E-rate standpoint, I wanted to recap what we receive in this. There are two categories. One is internet connections to the world. So the internet service provider is paid for with category 1. The internet connection between our building and all the schools is also category 1. Category 2 involves maintenance on our network and on our equipment, our switches, routers, and hubs. It also provides cabling for data and phones. And we were able to use the money for the Wi-Fi replacement, as I previously spoke. And we're in the process of receiving approval on the core network upgrade in this building. E-rate no longer funds phones. They no longer fund landline and or cell phones, and they do not fund the entire phone system. Historically, this is a chart back to 2012-13 showing our E-rate applications and what we received. You can see in 2021, we had a significant increase in that. That was when we had the worldwide technology project approved. In types of assessments, I want to quickly go through the things that we have done this year. We do STAR in reading and math 3 times a year, August, December, and April. It provides grade level equivalency information and also shows student growth. We also had plans to use a Scantron Achievement Series with the academic team that gives common formative assessments and also common summative assessments that's given after the teaching occurs. This is aligned to the pacing guide and also provides an evidence of impact proof on how the instruction is going. We also give ACT to every 11th grader. That's part of our CCR commitment to the annual performance report. It was given on April 5th, and we had a makeup day on April 19th. We also do the IB, or International Baccalaureate assessments. We do AP, or Advanced Placement assessments, and all of these are aligned to the CCR domain of the APR. We also provide the WIDA assessment, which is given to all of our ESOL students. That was given in January through March. We're currently in the MAP assessment window for 3rd and 8th graders. They take an assessment in ELA, math, and then our science is given in 5th and 8th. We're also wrapping up the end of course assessments, which is given in 4 content areas: Algebra 1, English 2, Biology, and Government. All of these are a requirement of DESE and title funding. And this is just a timeline of the assessment windows and who is involved in this. At this point, I will take any questions.
So I follow. So there's 5% of students who haven't returned equipment. Are all 5% of those able to use equipment while they're at school?
Yes, we have them listed in our roster as on site. So theirs stays in the classroom.
Okay. So at least while they're at school, 100% of our students have access to their own device.
They have access to either a classroom device that they take back and forth or one that they leave. The opt-out students are the same way. They have access to one that the district provides.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
My question is in regards to the email. Now, we have students that are graduating from SLPS very soon.
Mhm.
Will they still have access to their email address? And if so, how does the district utilize it? And how would the student utilize their email?
So we haven't turned off the last 5 graduating classes emails because we don't want to remove their OneDrive documents that they might be saving for college. So we have never turned off the email for the last 5 graduating classes. We typically don't reach out to them with that. But there is discussion with MSIP 6 that we're going to have to follow up with students even after they graduate from college. And so we might be using those emails eventually to reach out to the students to see whether they graduated or whether they're gainfully employed. Right now, we only have to do that for 180 days, but MSIP 6 is saying to do it after college.
So my other question then is, are there other departments that work with technology, just say for instance, because once a student graduates, they're still young, and there's a lot of things they don't know about the world. Do they have access to information that would help them, perhaps resources or resource fair online or things like that that can help them? Because when you're young, you're kind of lacking a lot of guidance that you might need when you are out there, even if you don't go to college.
Sure.
If you want to go to tech school, I'm hoping that we can utilize the email addresses more efficiently by providing job opportunities on those email addresses versus just allowing them to be empty or just waiting for something to happen, that we put information on there on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, perhaps even allowing some of our students to participate in that and communicate with one another during it with the emails.
Thank you for that suggestion. I will also say that our students are able to download all the Microsoft Suite products if they buy their own computer. So they would still have PowerPoint, Excel, Word, email automatically because they're still part of our SLPS domain. So they can use that product even in college.
But they have to buy it?
No, it's free.
Oh, okay.
It's free. It's part of our Microsoft agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For our, piggybacking on what Ms. Jones is saying, for our seniors, is it a 90-day program after they graduate do we have like a career readiness program for them after the 90 days? I think that's the question that I'm trying to get clarity on.
We certainly don't have that at this point. We do have an area that's set up in the summer for students to come and get their transcripts sent to colleges. So there's a center like that, but it's not about training or any other resource.
jobs.
Right.
Okay.
Ms. Benoit, there's one other question that I have in regards to our seniors, since so many of them are graduating. Just like in the past, when my children were seniors, there were a lot of their friends that had to drop out of college because they couldn't find additional funding after they, started attending school. And I'm just hoping that perhaps we can even utilize that to help them to locate funds to continue their education, because so many of them are in need of services while they're in college, and it might make or break their careers. So perhaps we can do that as well. Put information on where they might find additional monies that will help them stay in school.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Do we have any information on how, are those 5% that don't have it, only have access on school, is it impacting them at all academically?
We haven't run those numbers. We can certainly do that after the MAP test is over with. We could also align their STAR reading scores 3 times this year, August, December, and April, to see if it's impacting them. We certainly can do that.
And do you know like the longest range that they have, like, have they been without it the whole semester? Those students in that 5%, how long have they been without?
So the majority of the 5% have been without it because they didn't return something last year. So it's been the entire year. We have some that have broken devices as of the semester. So they've been without until they start a payment plan. But once they start a payment plan, even $5, we give them an actual new device so that they can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I keep struggling with the insurance piece and the equipment. Do when the kids get the equipment, do they get the option to do the insurance?
No, and we don't charge anyone until something breaks or gets lost. So everybody gets a free device.
Okay.
And if they return it with the iPad and the case and the cable, or the laptop and or the hotspot and the cable, then there's no charge.
But do we have insurance on the equipment?
We do not have insurance per se because we're self-funded, and it wouldn't be fiscally responsible for us to do that. So we don't have insurance like some other school districts do, but a lot of other school districts have you pay up front. And we're not having them pay up front. We're only having them pay if something occurs.
We do have Apple Care, am I correct?
We have Apple Care this year. So last year, if I broke a screen, it was $320 because the screen is the hardest thing to replace. But with the 12,000 that we bought last summer, we have Apple Care with those. And so now it's only $70 instead of $320.
We're expecting the person who damaged to pay that.
The $70. And the 70 was in the cost that we bought the iPad from Apple. It was included in our overall cost.
Okay.
And then we can get it replaced, and in the meantime, they get a brand new device.
Ms. Flournoy, a lot of our students might be financially challenged because they're students and we're depending on the parent to come up with those funds. So, and if the parent doesn't have it, then are there organizations that might, the parent or the student might apply to get those funds cleared out in their name so they won't have that worry while they're in school or when they're ready to graduate, and that might hold back their graduation?
Sure. So what we've done is we have worked with our foundation. We've worked with some local PTOs in each of the school district and each of the schools. We've worked with some churches. We've worked with some of our community partners. So there are available funds that the schools typically know in their community who could possibly help with those kind of situations.
Thank you, Ms. Flournoy. Thank you for the comments about the email addresses, Ms. Jones and Ms. Cousins. We'll come back to the board with a recommendation around what we could possibly do to extend an opportunity for those students to graduate, to get them information on a regular basis. I think those are good ideas. Thank you. Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, instead of doing the one on student support services, we're just going to focus on the student code of conduct, because I know that we still have about 12 days of school left and we could get some final information presented in June. Plus, you're waiting on some MHB grants to come through as well, and it may be advantageous to do it all at one time and just focus on the student code of conduct for tonight. Thank you.
Understood. Good evening to everyone. We'll go into the code of conduct book. The code of conduct book is annually revised, and what we call revised because most of it is written a year. We have teachers, principals, local 420, as well as we invite parents and of course legal to participate in the process. It's more of a revision process. As you can see in the first slide, the first slide is the PAC. So the PAC, we have a new PAC chair, and they wanted to revise the vision and mission statement. So what you have before you is the vision and mission statement that was revised by the PAC committee. Under our type 1, we also have, of course, we have legal with us. So we removed the SSA title, the Safe Schools Act title, from bomb threats and other threats of school safety and security, because it's not legally an SSA title. So that's why that was removed this school year. The principals decided they wanted to change and revise group fight. So if you see there, they just revised the language from several students to 2 or more students. Go down to the next slide. Drug possession was changed, was altered, mostly because of the new law. There's a new law, the new marijuana law within the city, and how they prosecute those individuals. So we had to change and take some of those things out based on the lawyer's feedback. So we do not, and we also, to make sure we're clear, students who are caught with those types of things, we do have a preferred program, so they're not always suspended. Those students enter what we call a preferred program, and they're there for 30 days and they're able to remain in school. So they're not suspended right away when those things happen. Go to type 2, group revision. The group fights, of course, we talked about that one. The sexual misconduct was changed to align to type 2 more than the type 1. Again, this was a legal situation. So our legal team wanted to change that. Also with bullying, if you go to the next slide, bullying had to be changed as well. We revised that one. That was revised to align more with the law. And so having conversations with our lawyers, they wanted to make sure that that was changed to align more with what the actual law says. Those were the only revisions for the code of conduct book. As I said earlier, we revise the book every year. So some years there are small revisions made by the principals, and those were all the revisions that was made for this year's book.
Can you go
Questions?
back to the bullying?
Yes.
I was trying to see, does that include the social media or?
So within our code of conduct book, we have a technology policy. And so the cyberbullying is under the technology policy.
But it is also listed here as
Mhm.
cyberbullying,
Mhm.
electronic or written communication. It is listed on the right-hand side.
Yes.
Uh,
It's hard.
It is listed. Bullying
to
may
see.
consist of physical actions, including gestures or oral,
Yep.
cyberbullying, electronic or written communication, any threat or retaliation for reporting of such acts.
And it's
So yes,
also,
it is.
yes, and it's also under our technology
Yes.
policy.
So just for clarification as to what I'm seeing, what 2021, 2022, I see it has the cyberbullying or cyber threats. Does that basically we just added on to that is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Correct.
The lawyers added on to that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Just some basic changes to the
Yes.
student code of conduct. And we'll come back next month because it'll be a full year of all data.
Mhm.
And so it might make sense to present at that time relative to the other presentation.
Understood.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Mr. Davis, that concludes all presentations for tonight by the administration.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. It's May, so it's a very long consent agenda, but it has nothing on next month's consent agenda, which is even longer. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Are there any items that members would like to take separately?
I'd like to have item 061022-65.
Taken separately? Okay, and
Yes,
we'll also
please.
take the new item 66 separately as well. Dr. Adams, I just had one question on 5102262, and I apologize, I didn't send this in advance, but there was a news story on this, so I just wanted this morning, so I wanted to ask a question about this. This is, we've talked about this before last year about the approving up to a certain dollar amount for the possibility of additional transportation vendors in the event we can find them to cover for any busing shortages. Is this just a renewal of that from last year?
Yes, sir, it is. And the media did ask us a question about it. And so you probably saw something from the media. Basically, what we're doing is extending that opportunity or the option to do that next year in case we have a similar problem this year. That's all we're simply doing. We hope and believe that our new vendor will be able to provide enough drivers for us this school year. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with the Transportation Department Thursday morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock to talk about where we are in the terms of that number. But just in case we want to have the opportunity to do what we did this year with outside vendors to support us if we have some deficits in that area. So that is correct.
Thank you.
I have a question as well about that item number 62. And in terms of outside vendors, who do we have that would currently service our vehicles that are driven by our security officers when they
The-
use vehicles?
Enterprise, I think, is the vendor that we use. And so that's who we rent the vehicles from, or lease them from rather. So Enterprise.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, is it even in our budget or possible to rent vehicles or for our own use in case of emergencies in the school situation?
When you say who we're referring to, Ms. Jones?
The enterprise.
But I'm saying,
Who you're
who-
leasing
are we
from.
talking about employees? or
We're
we talk-
talking about the school district, when they don't have enough vehicles or transportation to get our students back. and
Oh, I
forth from
understand what you're saying.
schooling. Is it possible to utilize places like Enterprise, or is it possible for us to start purchasing electric vehicles to have on standby for our own purposes?
I do need to research that question relative to additional vehicles. You're talking about vehicles that might could pick up kids for transportations when we have deficits?
Kids, staff, yes.
I need to research that. Right now, security is the only one authorized to pick up and drop off persons. And that's the only ones right now, other than our bus companies. Those are the only two entities that can pick up and drop off kids. And we use security when buses don't show up or when an incident might occur and we're bringing kids home. Those are the only two entities right now that can bring kids or transport any students.
But security can do that.
Security can do it. They do it on a regular basis.
So, but they use the vehicles to do that. They don't have vans or anything like that that they can use.
They use the enterprise vehicles that we lease. So we have, Mr. Davis, you want to come out? I can't remember how many vehicles we do have that transportation uses, and we have, he could kind of give a better idea.
Good morning. So we have 23 vehicles that we use. We also have taken out, our transportation division also has a 8-seated van that we use when principals have issues with parents not being able to get their kids. So our vehicles, along with like an 8-passenger van that we use.
Just one 8-passenger van.
Yes, ma'am. We don't have it often where they need it. It's rare occasions where parents can't get to the kids. And in those cases, that's when we come.
That's for security, but we've been getting a lot of complaints over this school year for parents not being able to get their students to school. And this is why I'm asking if it's possible that we can purchase, several electrical vehicles for our school for emergency situations, because we have a lot of students that are not making it to school and they want to be here.
Yeah, there is no doubt that this year has been a real challenge with 30 buses every single day not being available. And so it is something we'll look at for next year. We believe our vendor will be able to accommodate us. This is the first year that we've had this kind of outstanding issue, and a little bit last year as well because of the pandemic. I'll get back with the board at the next meeting about what the options might be available internally, because quite frankly, Ms. Jones, we have not looked at this as an internal issue, but as an external issue with outside contracts providing this service. So I'll come back to the board with a recommendation or to look to see what our options might be legally and otherwise, because there is a liability issue in terms of us doing that. That's the greatest challenge around a liability issue that will be all ours if we did that. And so I'll get back with the board in terms of what we can look at and what some options might be, if any at all, around the liability issue.
I just asked because I thought at one point.
You are correct. That predated me. That was prior to 2008. But with the bus, we did have our own food service company and our own transportation company. I think it went out in 2009 or 10. Is what I think. I don't remember for sure. Well, no, not 2009 or 10. 2004 or 5. You're welcome.
So I'll move to approve consent agenda items 510-2201 through 510-2264. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Henry?
Ms. Sonier,
Yes.
Ms. Fowl,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Cousins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed.
The next item is 510-2265. Ms. Jones? Your mic's off.
I wanted to pull that item because I had a lot of concerns from the very beginning about the CPN. I know that we met with the leadership and I found it very unsatisfactory, even with the explanation of what the purpose was. I feel like all the services that are being provided at the CPN can be provided to all schools that are target schools or underperforming schools at this particular time. And I'd like to make a motion at this time if there are no other questions.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion not to renew the agreement with the St. Louis Consortium Incorporated so that it terminates on June 30th, 2022 per section 14 of the agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? So just to understand your concern, Ms. Jones, because we've talked about this before, we talked about it at the work session. So your motion is to, because the way the agreement's written, it automatically renews. Then that's your understanding, right?
It does.
To terminate that to make sure that that's not automatically renewed. Is that
That's
what you're asking
absolutely
for?
what I'm asking for.
To reevaluate or just we're done, you want to be cut it off?
To get rid of the consortium and redesign this whole thing. We should start, I really feel like, this is just me talking with people in the community, that we really should start thinking about community schools and the way we think about providing services to other schools, because I don't think it's fair just to focus in on this particular school and focus on monies and special services to this particular group. It's wonderful that they get these services, but I think we need to make sure that our other schools that are suffering get the same kind of attention that this school has gotten, and we can do that. We could easily do that. I don't see any reason that we have to stop. So that is my reasoning.
So, Dr. Adams, so I'm just looking at this, the way this is worded is just to extend the memorandum of understanding through August 30th, which we talked about, to keep the CPN in place, to give us time to do what Ms. Jones is talking about, to sort of reimagine the governance structure of that.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what this is. It's extended for 60 days with the entire purpose to do exactly what Ms. Jones said, to come back with another entity, may not be the CPN, relative to supporting these two schools or other schools if the funding and support is there to do so.
And you can still do that even if this is approved today? You can
If
still-
what is approved today, Ms. Jones' recommendation of mine,
If Ms. Jones' recommendation of denying it altogether, you can
it
still-
ends, basically, you're ending in June 30th.
But you can still come back with, right, and start a new one aligned with.
The
you know,
intent is to alter the existing agreement as opposed to start a brand new process. This took an entire year to put in place. And so the idea of coming back quickly and putting something in place to provide support to students is not likely to occur by the time frame school starts. So I want to be clear, the CPN in terms of support to these two schools is not broken. What's broken here is the trust relative to this particular item, but the schools are receiving support. And obviously we would love to do what Ms. Jones is indicating for all schools, but these are two targeted schools. Quite frankly, Ashland has the highest free and reduced lunch rate of any school in the city. And so this was selected based on the need for those two particular schools. But if the board chooses to do so, then I can't guarantee that I'm gonna come back in 60 days with a brand new entity that it took us a year to put in place.
And could you give an idea of what, so if it goes through and we say no, what are the tangible impacts? Because you're saying they're getting assistance, they're getting extra help, so.
It goes away.
What, like, let's say you're.
The
at
the
home
additional
and-
resources that are aligned to supporting that particular school goes away.
That's just additional resources is vague. I'm asking, like, if I'm at home and I want to know it's not being extended, stops what for this school? What are some specific things that the schools are able to get because of the CPN network being there?
The teacher leadership team that makes decisions relative to what's best for that particular school goes away. The additional dollars that were targeted for Ashland and Merrimack, and those dollars might support extended day. Obviously, we have ESSA dollars right now, so it's kind of like a wash in terms of that piece, just a total transparency. But it's really around the teacher leadership teams that are in place that make decisions around these two particular schools.
So I'm just trying to understand, it takes a year to get a teacher leadership team in place at the schools? if
There
we
was-
don't go through this?
There was a specific proposal written to allow us to do those kinds of things that we put in place at the CPN.
My question then is, I mean, I've asked numerous amounts of time about an explanation for the CPN and never got a satisfactory explanation. I went through that document, like I said, and I ran out of a yellow highlighter because I'm really worried that I'm asked to make a decision that's so vital and key to our community, and I not have a full understanding. I never got a real explanation from legal, and they are the ones who helped put this document together. So I don't understand this whole thing about trust. But the thing that's most important to me is that teacher leadership is really important, and that every school should have that opportunity in SLPS. And this is just has been an example, and they've done it before where we've had teachers to lead in the classroom. So why not, let's go ahead and do that now. We need that to happen. And as far as Ashland having the highest number of free and reduced, I doubt that, because there are so many students in SLPS families that are struggling and need help. We don't need a study anymore. This is why we have the highest rate of crime, because poverty is rampant in the city of St. Louis. So we don't need to keep spinning the wheel over again. We know that these things are happening. Every school here just needs help. Just like Ashland, Merrimack, all these schools need help. And I just want to see all of our schools get the same amount of assistance, just like these two targeted schools. I don't think it's fair that they receive all this special treatment and the rest of them not receive the same opportunity as this school here.
I have a question. If we're saying to take this off, and you're saying that if this is removed, that within 60 days, whoever did the MOU or what have you couldn't come back with a different MOU or a different level of discussion? Because I'm trying to understand how could that not be?
There are two separate pieces. There is a 501c that has been created, that is the CPN, and then you have a MOU, and there's a board agreement between the between the board and that particular entity.
Right.
And so what has to be done first is the revisioning of the 501c3 with possibly new members, a new name, and new focus about what it's going to do. Then an MOU has to be done with the board with that particular entity. And so the work that will have to take place first, Ms. Cousins, is obviously the rewording of the consortium, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so that independent 501c3 would have to be rewritten. And it has to be then a name go to the state like we did before.
So but with that, you can basically do an amendment to that 501c3.
You can do an amendment, that is correct.
And that's the part I'm saying. I think the issue, and from what my concern is the way that it was created, how it was done, is where you bring in the statement of the trust factor. It brings the challenge for us to be able to trust what was really going on. So my question is, even if this is taken off, I don't think that eliminates the opportunity for it to basically go back to the drawing board, do whatever amendment that needs to be done to that particular 501c3, present this entity with a better MOU that would make sense for us to be able to support.
The MOU likely won't change, quite frankly, in terms of the support. What will change is obviously the 501c3.
Right.
But the MOU, in terms of the agreement with the outside entity, likely will not change in terms of the support that it's providing to the school.
Okay, I have another question. Didn't we have some of us that had a meeting with some of them at the CPN? Like, I'm trying to understand, even now, and we've had conversations about it. For me, it's not a matter, I guess it is a matter of trust, but I want to hear about the outcomes. Like, I want to hear specifically, okay, this has been in place and this has been a benefit of it tangibly to the school. I understand that, okay, it's a high need, all of that. I get why it was charged and was targeted, but I think to Ms. Jones's point, like, what are the specific outcomes? What are the benefits? What are the pluses and the positives of this being present at that school? And I don't hear any of that specifically being named. Like, all the broadness, it sounds like when we first hear about something that hasn't been in place and there's no results or nothing to speak of. I don't understand why there's nothing specific that's like, oh, well, this has improved, or they've had access to this. Like, I want to hear tangibly, how has it impacted those schools?
We have provided at least 2 presentations to the board 2 months ago, and then in October relative to those things. I didn't bring that information tonight, but attendance, enrollment at Ashland specifically compared to what their historical data has been, additional partnerships supporting the school as well in terms of a little bit of foundation in Ashland, but I don't have all of that data in front of me, but I provided that to another one is that Ashland, you've had less teacher turnover, and there are data points that could have obviously presented to the board with that I provided before, but I don't have all of them on top of my head today, but those things are some of the kinds of outcomes that you're looking for that have been shown to be supportive for these two schools.
Yeah, I guess too, it was also phrased to other board members who've had a chance to go, like, what feedback did you get when you all went and were able to have a conversation?
My challenge was I did have the opportunity to go and visit Merrimack, but my perspective really from this is with 2019, this supposedly started in 2019, and from 2019, we were hit with COVID. So in my opinion, I just don't think that the time has been given for them to actually produce data to show what impact, that the particular program could have been making.
Yeah, well, Ms. Cousins, with that being said, none of them have had that opportunity. Everybody is going through COVID. And I'm having a serious issue with, it didn't just start in 2019. This started way before that. There were groups meeting 2 years prior to that to talk about and organize the CPN. And not one time was the elected board, even though we weren't in power, were invited to the table. And then even though now I'm sitting at the table, I still have not yet to get an explanation of this full document after reading it. I mean, I got tired of using the highlight. I mean, this is really ridiculous to me. I don't understand why, if we have a school board, we have a superintendent, why do we need all this extra amenities? Why do we need an independent contractor to have so much power? We haven't given it to any of the other organizations like that. We have given no other organizations this much power, and this thing has a lot of power in it. And they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars more than other schools. And this still is not fair. That's all I'm saying. And we talk about COVID affecting these two particular schools. Okay, that's great. But it affected every other school the very same way. And I'm sure their scores are no better than the rest of them. I just don't think it's fair. I just think we need to start talking about community schools and lengthening the school day if we need to, and spreading the help out instead of just focusing in on this particular group. Because I'm not even sure who's behind this organization. I'm just not sure. So I can never, in good faith, say yes or give my vote to this.
So, Dr. Adams, one of the concerns at the April 8th special meeting that we had, and then we discussed it at the work session before, was just in some of the language, the way the agreement that Ms. Jones is referencing in the auto renewal. And I still haven't wrapped my head around that, because it does say it auto renews for 3 years on June 30th, 2022. And then the way to get out of that for the 3-year period seems a little egregious. Like, it almost like you really can't ever get out of it. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion would be, if we vote now to terminate the agreement, you can come back with a short-term MOU at the next meeting that's cleaner, that doesn't have auto renewal provisions, and that will buy you the time to sort of work on the nonprofit structure. Would that be agreeable,
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yeah,
Would that work,
we
Dr.
need to
Adams?
start over.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So my concern is that when forming this nonprofit, like Donna said, we were not consulted. The Board of Education, the elected board, was not consulted. Some of the concerns that we brought up at the time when we met about this in 2019 in our non-governing meetings was that there was not enough parent involvement, that there was not enough actual teacher involvement, that there was not enough board presence to oversee how some of these decisions are being made, how some of these funds are being spent. So with the governance being in question and the composition of the board of directors of that nonprofit that we have an MOU with, they would have to be the ones to change their own bylaws, and we would have to rely on them to do that. And what I am seeing is that they are not organized enough to do that. They cannot get their board meetings together. So if Dr. Adams is able to get together a new group of people or work with the existing group to form some new bylaws, to form some new governing procedures that accounts for what the elected board was elected to do, which is to oversee these funds and to maintain the integrity of these schools, I would be okay with that. But as it is right now, we can't just say, well, we want it different. We have to rely on their independent board. So
to be clear, we suspended our meetings when the questions came up at the last meeting. And so we have not been intentionally, we were supposed to meet last Thursday because we were waiting for this. And so that's not a lack of capacity to do so or interest. It's just that we paused because we did not want to be meeting while the board still had questions. So we paused meetings 2 months ago, 3 months ago, awaiting some recommendation from the board before rewriting the bylaws as you indicated. So we are poised to do so and ready to do so, quite frankly.
Got it.
But we paused because we did not want to be seen as being going against the board in any way, shape, or form while the board still had questions.
So is there a way for us to submit to you and the board of the CPN what we would like to see different? The things that the elected board discussed, well, it was just Donna and me at this point, but we're a new full board. None of us had anything to do with the CPN. So is there a way for us to all kind of come together to help form that governance structure?
Well,
going
again,
forward?
it is an independent 501c3, but the recommendations coming from this board
Right.
would obviously be very important to what's placed into the MOU
And
or into the bylaws.
we do have an appointment on that board, and Ms. Jones is our new representation. So I think she's a good representative of the concern.
I agree. Thank you.
And we also did, I think we've talked about this before, maybe we didn't, Ms. Cousins, Ms. Jones and I did meet with Dr. Dowden-White, who's the president of that board, and she was very receptive to our concerns, actually shared some of them about the governance structure, but was also very adamant of keeping something in place because there are some good things going on at those schools. But from my perspective, it's always been more of a governance issue, and you were there when it happened. So I know you have those same concerns, probably more than I do.
So my other question is, if this does not renew July, or at the end of June, what are we losing in summer services with these schools? If there is no CPN, what are they currently doing over the summer that we would be losing?
I don't have that in front of me. Obviously, we're going to do summer school for all school. Ashland happens to be a summer school site. I don't think Merrimack is, but we run regular summer school. I'm not sure what kind of planning they had in place. So I don't have anything. I don't have a document in front of me to tell me what they were planning to do. But I can provide that. Mr. Hartman is providing support there in the school site, but I don't know exactly what they're going to be doing this summer that will be lost.
Thank you.
So right now, we don't know. If we cancel it, the schools could potentially use.
This goes until June 30th, as
Yeah, summer
indicated.
school
So
ends.
we still have summer school to June 30th. It would not necessarily quote unquote affect summer school. You ending it tonight doesn't end it until June 30th. That's what the recommendation looks like it will be. To Mr. Davis's point, if we're able to get something working with the members of the board back to you in June, I will hope that the board would say yes.
Okay. Donna needs a second.
There was a second. Is everybody clear on the motion?
Could you restate the motion, Matt,
Donna,
Mr. President?
could you restate it for us? Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion not to renew the agreement with the St. Louis Consortium so that it terminates on June 30th, 2022 per section 14 of the agreement.
Second.
Ms. Henry.
Ms. Sonier,
Yes.
Ms. Val,
I'm sorry, point of clarity. I think motions need to be made in the affirmative so that we would vote against something, or can we, Mr. Legal Counsel, can we make a motion to terminate something, or would it need to be a motion to either remove this so that it is not terminated, or because of the way it's worded in the MOU, it has to be a motion to terminate? Is that correct? I just want to make sure that I'm voting the right way.
Yeah, I think it has to be.
So I think.
Okay, got
I think
it.
the motion was correct.
Got it. Just making sure. So I am going to vote yes on Donna's motion.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Cousins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
motion passed.
Final item on the consent agenda is 510-2266, and I'll just read this for the public. To approve a resolution calling a bond election in the St. Louis School District of the City of St. Louis, St. Louis Public Schools on August 2nd, 2022. Ballot in the amount of $160 million for building and facilities improvement with no tax increase for St. Louis city residents. Do we have a motion?
Approve, item 510-2266.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. I'm trying to understand why this motion or why the bond issue can't be on the November ballot. And let's see. I guess before passing something like this, I would like to see exactly what the bond would finance. Because many times bonds get financed or approved. And we talked about the rehabbing of the schools, new schools and this and that. But I don't know, I guess I want to see something on paper where I'm actually going to see where the money is going to go.
I have the same concerns with Ms. Jones. This board was asked, or at least the two of us were asked a year and a half ago to close schools. And on the promise of closing those schools, we were given this vast wish list of things that we could solve, the problems that we could solve with all this money that we would save. And to me, living in North St. Louis and seeing the number of schools that were closed there, and now saying that the bond is going to not cause a tax increase. Just to be clear, the board votes on the tax levy for debt service every September. We can choose to increase it at any point. At this point is estimated to not increase for this year, but we don't know what's going to happen down the line. So we can't necessarily treat the taxpayers like a bottomless pit of money when we're closing schools in their neighborhoods and not necessarily returning services to them. So the things that I see on this list that we could do, upgrading building infrastructure, replacing roofs, upgrading technology to modernize classrooms, we were supposed to be able to do a lot of that by closing schools. And that was a very, very hard vote for me. I voted no on closing schools because I was not sure that we would be able to do that. And here we are a year and a half later asking for more money. And we cannot guarantee that those taxes are not going to go up.
I guess I'm having a serious problem with it because I remember doing the tour of all these vacant buildings, and I remember Northwest High School. I remember being 17 years old, and I'll be 65 in just a little bit. And I remember on my porch looking out and thinking, there is nothing at my school down the street that I want to do. And now the school is closed. And then we have Walnut Park right down the street on Thecla and right down the street, and it's closed. And no, right down the street, Walnut Park Elementary used to be open, but it's closed as well. But when I went inside Northwest, the carpet was stained and there was no life there. The money clearly hadn't ever really gotten there to improve the school. And it was one of the newer schools built in the 60s, and we allowed some vendor to come in and just ramshackle the money and throw anything at our students and our staff. And then there are just so many schools that never, when we went to visit Clay School, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but when I went to Clay School, I tore my pants sitting on a little bench that one of the students probably sat on. And it was so old, I thought it was like from the 1930s or something. And I was thinking, why did they put some equipment in here? There's no money being spent over here. And some old exercise equipment in one room. No money had been spent over there. And we closed it, and now a lot of organizations are sitting in there. But when we closed that school, Clay School, which is so conveniently located next to Highway 70, we were hoping that these kind of things would help increase the student population or enrich our students, but it never happened. I want to see, if I'm going to be voting for something like this, I want to see the plans, the big book of plans, and exactly where the money is going to go. This is really troublesome to me because even just the last thing I'm going to say, my grandbaby, she is scheduled to go to Humboldt, but she doesn't want to go. She thought it was so scary and dark inside. It's just a dark old school. It's time for us to have some new schools or some rehab schools for our students, just like everybody worried about that soccer stadium. We need new schools for SLPS. If we want families to come back, because families are everything, then we need to make sure we got a plan that people can look at and say, oh yeah, I'll vote for this, because this is what we want to see, this is what we want. And this is the way I'm thinking with my vote. This is what I'm thinking.
So I have a question. On the bond that we've had in the past, did we spell this out, that these were the things that we were committing to?
There were similar things that we committed to in 2010, and those things were accomplished based on the amount of money that we had.
So the things that were spelled out in the bond for 2010 You're saying for the most part, all of those things were actually done.
Not for the most part, for all of them were done. It's just that the vastness of what was needed could not accommodate all of the buildings we had. And so we didn't put elevators in every building because we didn't have enough funds to go to every single building. And so, yes, the funds were spent in a way that we indicated that they were going to be spent 100%.
And so with this resolution or with what we're presenting now, it sounds like some of the concerns that Ms. Jones is having, you're saying that this bond, if it passes, that those issues, the major concerns that she have with the buildings would be addressed.
Some of them will. We have $333 million of facility needs in our old buildings. And so this bond would help to address some of those things. But let me be clear, Ms. Cousins, not all of them, because we have old buildings that are over 150 years old. And so as things break, they have to be repaired. And so what districts normally do is do bonds to make that happen. Some districts do bonds on a regular basis, every 2 or 3 year period, because they realize that they have to keep up the buildings that students are in. If we don't do this, then we're saying we're not keeping up the buildings because we're not going to find additional dollars to do it.
And the last bond was 2010.
2010, 12 years ago.
Okay.
And prior to that, I don't think there was a bond for 10 or 15 years.
I think that, similar to what Natalie said, similar to what Donna said, I think a specific plan is good so that, so that the public, so we know what we can hold ourselves accountable to getting done. And so that the public knows what they can hold us accountable to getting done. I know I have a list of kind of the needs spelled out, but I do think it's good if there was an analysis say, we think the bond will bring in this amount of funds. And this is, specifically where we are thinking of using the money. I think in general, it's just rooted to the frustration. Like I've been in schools and there's missing tiles in the ceiling, there's buckets on the floor collecting water. And so to have that going on, but then to know the funds that we have coming into the district and then to be asking for a bond, I can totally see why it's like, well, wait a minute, why are we we're going to ask for this? Where is it going to? So I think we definitely, maybe I even need to rescind the motion. We can pull it until there's just more of a specific plan of this is how much money we see coming in and this is where we're thinking of applying it so that we can have that conversation unless give us your feedback if that's not.
So the board received a FCAP that lays out every single issue in every single one of our buildings. It's a 40, 50, 60 page document that lays out school by school what the needs are in every single school, the roof, the flooring. So the board has that document. That document has been in place the last 3 or 4 years. So we get an update on a regular basis around every single school. So some of those kinds of items are going to be covered. If you're asking us how we're going to spend our $160 million, we have to do an RFP. We have to do all of those kinds of things to be detailed in the way that you're asking for, but we don't do that unless we have the dollars to do so. Right. And so I think we're asking, do we put the cart before the horse? We need to know that there's a commitment around 160 or whatever the dollars might be before we determine what's going to happen in every single building. I can tell you XYZ school needs an elevator, but I have to do an RFP to determine that cost. It cost me 1.2 or 1.5 million. And so I can't tell you that right now, or at least I can tell you that right now. We have to go through an RFP process to do that, which is a lengthy process. And so we don't put that kind of work in to do that unless we know that there is a level of commitment from obviously the board first and obviously the public second for dollars to make that happen. I'm not sure what the board is asking for, to be honest with you, because the board has all of the information they need to make some kind of decision regarding this. If the answer is no, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that, but understand there is an implications as it relates to that. And so if the board is asking me to come back and tell you what's going to happen at XYZ school, give you all of the details, I have to put an RFP out. I have to negotiate with the vendor relative to that. And based on that cost, and I don't know how much to put in this school, but I can't do that unless I know that there's a commitment around going out to get dollars to do it. That's what we did in the past, and we didn't have any issues in terms of completing all of the projects that we put out bids for.
Sorry, Tony. I don't think that there's a reluctance for us to do it. We just redid committees, and I know that I'm chairing the budget committee, so maybe this is something to do, for us to talk about together. I just think that, there has to be even though it can be hard to predict certain things, if we come up with like a list of estimates, like just so that there is a level of transparency and accountability. I understand it's hard to predict some of those things and you don't know until you put out the RFP, but it could even be something like, okay, we estimate 1.2 to 1.6 million for this. And I know that that's work, but sometimes that's the work that just.
But the
comes without
FCAP,
work.
Ms. Sonia, has that information. There's a 300, whatever the
That's
number
what I
page document that I provided to the board, not just this year, but in previous years. So there is a document that gives you some idea within a certain range, 10 or 15%, when we closed schools, we did the same exact thing. And so Mrs. Vile's point around what we made a commitment to, we made a commitment to reading teachers, they're in place, full-time nurses, they're in place, full-time counselors, they're in place, based upon staffing allocations, meaning that if we can't find people, we can't find them. But the financial commitment has been made to do what we said we were going to do when we closed schools. In every single case, we said we were going to do a learn and earn program. We're doing the learn and earn program. So everything that we said we were going to do, we did based upon closing 7 schools. There were never any conversations around covering additional facility needs in that particular recommendation. None whatsoever. It was all about staffing and supporting schools.
So based on the bond that we're going for and based on the cost factor for our schools, what did you say it's 300 million? I just want
It's
to make
over
sure.
$300 million.
For all to
it was
bring the
330.
schools up to code, basically for the most part, it's over 300
It's
million.
over $300 million.
Okay.
So I just have a couple of thoughts. First of all, school districts are somewhat unique as political subdivisions in that our capital improvements are generally paid for by bond issues. That's why school districts pass bond issues. That's what the law is for. So this is, the appropriate way to use that law because that's the way these things are funded. There is not a doubt that there is at least $330 million worth of need in our buildings. If you look at the FCAP, the thing that always drew my attention, because I have 2 daughters and I hear this and I've heard this every year, you can go to almost half of those buildings and there's $1.5 million worth of bathroom repairs that need to be made. And so to me, we have 2 jobs. One is we need to fulfill our obligation to make sure that we are using the appropriate remedies to bring in the revenue to make sure that the buildings are appropriate for our 20,000 students, for our 2,000 employees that go into that building day in and day out. And a lot of them haven't had improvements for 10 years, if they even got them then. They're long overdue. There'll be more even when we get these done, because it's not even going to be enough for the entire amount. And the second thing is, in terms of our other responsibility, is to make sure that we're transparent, to make sure that the money is spent as we've promised, and to make sure that, when we set that tax levy every year, that we are taking into concerns the fact of high tax levies as well as the needs that we have. And so that's our job as well. I think we can do them both. But I also just really think that it's been 10 years and the need is great. And this is not like other school districts where, they say, okay, well, we're going to add on to this building, or we're going to build this new building, or we're going to build this new stadium. If you go out to St. Charles, that's what their bond issues are about. They can tell you with renderings, we're going to build this big new building. That's not our situation. We don't need big new buildings. We have a lot of old big buildings that need a lot of work. And this is going to be a no tax increase. It's kind of an automatic thing that most school districts do. We do it less than most because we do have a lot of other issues that taxes go for in the city of St. Louis, and we're keeping that cognizant of that. But it seems like to me it's time. I mean, it's always time, but it's time now. So that would be my thought.
Well, Matt, I'm going to ask if we can, instead of being on the August ballot, to be on the November ballot, to give us time, to give the public time to chime in on what they want to see as well.
And there's pros and cons to being on that other ballot. And if I'm wrong, correct me. One, it's definitely going to be a bigger turnout, so you'll have a greater sense of what the community wants. The other thing is going to be a much busier ballot. So it's going to possibly get lost in this long ballot because, people will go in for the hot race, which is probably going to be the Senate race, to go in and make a choice. And then as you get down to this long worded ballot issue, you may lose interest. Whereas if we're on the August ballot, It's a couple primaries in us. It's going to have a lot more attention and get a lot more focus, but we know people are going to be less interested in voting in that one, so it'll be a lower turnout. So it's pros and cons. I would prefer to keep it on the August ballot. Is there any further discussion? Well, we have a motion and a second. So Ms. Henry,
What's the motion?
the motion is to approve the item 510-2266.
Ms. Sonier,
Yes.
Ms. Val,
No.
Ms. Jones, Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We now move on to public comment. As a reminder, I'll call my first one, Mr. Monroe. And Mr. Monroe, I'll remind you as well as everyone else that you are limited to 3 minutes. Please don't use direct. It's expired, yes. That's the time, according to the policy, the time is before the meeting and we have a full docket. So it is 30 minutes, it's 3 minutes per person. And we ask you to be respectful and not be derogatory. Mr. Monroe, you're.
I'm reading from a document I just handed out to the board. Prospective overview of partnership agreement, St. Louis Public Schools, Harriet Tubman High School and Career Center, and Harriet's House to be entered into the beginning of the 2022-23 school year. The St. Louis Public School District will partner with the contract management school organization known as Harriet Tubman High School and Career Center to offer those at-risk children an alternative to traditional curriculum general education. The St. Louis Public Schools will make available to the Harriet Tubman High School and Career Center and its board of directors the current school properties known as Beaumont High School, 3836 Natural Bridge Road, St. Louis, Missouri 63107, and the closed school property known as Banneker Elementary School, 2840 Samuel Shepherd Drive. St. Louis Public School would deed the property at 2840 Samuel Shepherd Drive to Harriet Tubman and his board of direction at a price of $100,000. Under Harriet Tubman, the property located at Samuel Shepherd Drive would be utilized as a female dormitory. Our children are homeless and in the streets, and we have plans to make that a dormitory for our female students. We ask that the St. Louis Public School deed the property at 3836 Natural Bridge for a cost of $300,000. Terms of purchase shall be negotiated and finalized at a future mutual agreed date and time. Under Harriet Tubman, the property located at 2840 Samuel Shepherd Drive would be utilized as a female dormitory during student enrollment in Harriet Tubman. A complete comprehensive management and budget portfolio will be provided upon request. I'm not going to read the other, but I want to say something to our new president of the board. If what you're doing to the Black community, sir, as president of this board, if what you're doing is commensurate with what you've done to myself and that brother here who sat by the door waiting on the citywide planning that you guys canceled and postponed and didn't even let anybody know. You have my email address, you have my home phone, you have all of this, yet and still, you canceled a meeting. Me and this brother sat at that door and we couldn't get involved in it. If this is what your stewardship is going to be, I'm voting against any bond issue that doesn't allow the community to come and sit proactively at a table. The mayor of the city of St. Louis gave you a letter on the 22nd asking her name to be removed from that citywide planning until you allow community and independent schools to come to the table. And until you do
That's
so,
3 minutes, Mr. Monroe, thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Ms. Funches.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Avis. I have 2 children at Mason Elementary. I'm also a chairperson for the Parents of Color Committee, which is like a branch of the Parent Action Council. We're relatively new. One of our concerns with the district is our inability to get proper communication. While I've been sitting here, you've addressed the bus issue, but it's not a new issue. We're like 10 days away from the school being finished. And I'm pretty sure that there were lots of children who were not able to get rides to school for a lot of the winter time. It's kind of disheartening to hear you say in a public space when that article came out from Fox saying that this was new to you, because it's not. And it's shameful for you to say that it was new to you, because these children are what we entrust you with. So per our agenda for our parents of color, we are trying to figure out a better way to communicate with you guys, a way that's not us just saying things into an open space and hoping that maybe you'll reply to one of us or all of us. I know that in one of the meetings 2 meetings ago, a parent did have a problem with a bus. You addressed that problem individually, but it's an overall problem. And like I said, it's disheartening that you only address one person when you know that this is a problem for a lot of children. So one of our suggestions, sorry, my phone just died, was kind of having a quarterly forum with parents and board members, kind of like a table talk situation. Just like as I sit here and I watch your faces and the way that you communicate with each other, you have reactions and you're able to discuss something immediately. As a parent, I would also like the opportunity to be able to say something to you and you react and we can have a discussion. Sure, I think in the beginning, it might be a bit disorderly, but I think with the trust and time, more people will feel comfortable discussing things with you that affect them immediately. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Funches.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Good evening, Charles Babatu Murphy. Black Lives Matter. In 2016, I started wearing a Black Lives Matter button on my kufi African style hat. Some people know me as the Hat Brother. I teach at a predominantly African-American school in St. Louis Public Schools. We have students from all over the world. People ask me, why are you wearing that in a predominantly Black school? I would answer, this is the place where the lives of Black students appear to matter least. Our students are traumatized by lack of 6 basic things that all humans need: food, clothing, shelter, education, medication, defense. White supremacy tells them that they are not worth having these things. White supremacy keeps a knee in their necks everywhere they turn. White supremacy imprisons things. White supremacy keeps a knee, white supremacy tells political leaders to defund education. Don't give predominantly Black and brown and red school districts enough funding to hire enough qualified mental health specialists or enough qualified counselors or enough qualified nurses, or enough qualified custodians or enough qualified food service persons or enough qualified teachers or enough qualified teachers' aides, et cetera, et cetera. White supremacy tells school leaders and administrators not to challenge political leadership. White supremacy tells school administrators to just look out for themselves, their relatives and their friends. Look the other way and we'll compensate you for it. Nepotism plus cronyism smells corruption. And what does qualified really mean? Qualified means empathetic persons who know right from wrong and have the courage to take a stand. Qualified means committed to democratic principles and the welfare of all stakeholders. When a leader tells us to do something that's wrong, we must not do it. If leadership punishes someone for refusing to do what's wrong, then we must speak up and support that person. Systemic racism threatens all of us and pressures us into this moral breakdown. I wear this Black Lives Matter pin to remind white people that they must consciously examine themselves and fight against conscious and unconscious racism. I wear this Black Lives Matter pin because white supremacy reflected in Black people shows up as self-hatred. And Black people must not give into that self-hatred hatred, and destroy each other. I wear this Black Lives Matter pin to remind all people that we must rise to a renewed moral challenge and make sure that the welfare of each person is the supreme law of the land. So you want to talk about white supremacy? It's out there. Well, these days, there are more and more white people who appear to be latching on to absurd theories and irrational behavior inspired by the impending loss of their white skin privilege. It haunts them like some kind of PTSD. I call it white unsanity. It shows up everywhere, resurfacing again as a tool of American capitalism. This is the latest eruption in the age-old battle between democracy and autocracy. Autocracy is showing its ugly face everywhere from Ukraine to despicable anti-women's rights movement in American legislative bodies. Right on citizenship.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Ms. Gray, Michaela Gray.
We only have one more board meeting of the 21-22 school year left. I am saddened, disheartened, and disappointed with the progress or lack of progress made in cementing a plan for our children. Gloria Nolans told me I am not a parent, nor am I an SLPS alum. She told me my opinion was paid. I would like to be clear. My opinion was formed after nearly 3 years of talking with families who send their children to failing schools. Schools that do not educate children well, as demonstrated by test scores published by DESE. Before me is a board more concerned with fighting for power within itself than coming up with a comprehensive plan to get all students on track that includes children with IEPs that continue to fall further behind. I am waiting. No, I am demanding on behalf of every struggling student that you come up with a plan, not just any plan, a plan that includes the families of the children in the planning and implementation process. For decades, it's been said that learning starts at home, that schools would be better if parents were involved, yet you continue to shut the community out and the constant pleas from parents. This board continues to bicker about charter schools instead of addressing with urgency the well-known fact that our children can't read. Not to mention how you postponed a citywide plan to plan for the plan. And still, no one knows what the plan is. The type of school is irrelevant if the education is poor. We are calling for quality schools, period. As a board, if you cannot put your personal bias, power struggle, and differences to the side to be a collective body of thoughtful, intentional people who will uplift children as you make decisions, I would respectfully ask that you remove yourself from the board. We need people in the seat that will center children every time, not just when it's convenient.
Ms. Nevels McNeil. Ma'am, if you could give it to Ms. Willis, and I'm sorry, that's our policy.
There was money for Ashland and also for Gateway School, $75,000 in the district for this. he can respect her, but they also have the ability of the board to ask for the rules to be suspended and to be able to ask another person to be allowed to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. Could we let Ms. Nevels McNeil speak, please? Thank you.
Okay, so good evening. I'm Irma Nevels McNeil. I'm representing the Missouri retired teachers and for Region 14. So my concern is that for St. Louis Public School employees, with our pension, we believe in defined benefits. That is, that the employer, which is St. Louis Public Schools, and the employees, which are the employees of the system, they put their money into a fund, and this fund is to last them a lifetime. We do not believe in defined distribution. It's sort of like a 401k, where the employee is responsible for depositing money into their retirement, because usually this fund runs out after 5 years when you get out. Things happen. So here, what I've given to you is the history of the retirement system for St. Louis. We're the oldest one. We started in 1944, and the biggest, the county, which we call it, every district except besides Kansas City, there are 3 public school funds: St. Louis public school system, Kansas City public school system. Then you have the public school system / public employees education retirement system, which consists of the non-certified teachers. So we started in 1944, and it kind of like goes along, let you know that at one time we did receive stipends and so forth. Then the things changed. I'll go down to the year of 2007, where Senator Maida Coleman at that time, as Senate Bill number 623, she did get a bill passed where the pension board does have some power to grant a cost of living or some benefits to the employees, because these employees have not had anything for 17 to 18 years. That's a long time. That's a generation. So Missouri retired teachers, we are what you call the watchdog. That's our mascot. So that's the only thing we do. We go to Jefferson City, we watch the legislation, see when anything hurt our funds. So we believe in defined benefits, and we believe that all employees, public employees, should be taken care of. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chester Asher.
Hi, I come in love and community and social justice for you all and for our kids. There is a level of urgency that I want to push this board to embrace. When we look at the district and we look at about 20% of kids reading, writing, and doing basic math on grade level, that means the overwhelming majority of our kids can't read, can't do basic math. And we know the issues that leads to. We know it leads to incarceration. We know it leads to poverty. We know it leads to violence. So the urgency with which you need to act, I found disturbingly absent. So I myself am trying to start a charter school. I'm saying, you know what? I see that there are issues. I love our kids. I love my own kids. I want to build something that embraces their excellence and their greatness. I don't see it in SLPS currently. So, you know what? I'm gonna try to build my own. The SLPS board supports a moratorium in charter schools. So say, Mr. Asher, we don't want you to start your own charter school. We don't want you to start your own school. So you all put a moratorium or try to dissuade people from starting and building the institutions of excellence for their children. Fine. I assume you all are going to do it. Then about 8 months ago, I hear Dr. Adams is involved in a citywide Better Futures, citywide planning to build a coalition of all interested parties to make excellent schools. The board apparently says, Dr. Adams, stop that. Stop whatever you're doing. We're gonna handle it. Fine. You're gonna handle it? Fine. You all say you're gonna have a meeting. It takes about 8 months to have this meeting, 8 months. I get here for that meeting and suddenly the meeting is actually not even happening. We have to get we have to get a Zoom link somewhere to get on the meeting. And when we get on the meeting, what happens? The board says, hey, what do y'all want for a better education in St. Louis? Okay, great. We'll see you all in 2 months.
Don't put your hands on me, mister. You can't put your hands on me. I'll leave. Don't you put your hands on me. Whoever tell you to do that got it wrong. I'm telling you. I'm telling you to put your hands on me. Don't touch me. I'll leave.
So you have 8 months to plan a meeting, and then at that meeting, we talk for about 10 minutes, and they say, in 2 months, we're gonna have another meeting. That doesn't even near the urgency that our children need. And for me, when I see that in primarily Black districts, that's what modern day racism looks like. The lack of urgency. You don't want people to create their own schools, but then you don't have a plan to make better schools. So either you resign or you get
That's your
serious
3 minutes,
about
Mr.
making
Asher.
change for our
Mr. Asher,
students,
that's 3 minutes.
for my
Thank you.
children, for
Our
people
next
who
speaker,
look like me.
Our next speaker is Jackie Gold.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. It's not fair.
It's fine. I think we know that the sense of urgency our children deserve.
Jackie Gold, thank you.
Seeing that or hearing that in any way, and rather what we're seeing is
Mr. Asher, please.
people actually,
Mr. Asher, please.
actually disabling actions that are happening.
Mr. Asher, please. We have another speaker. We still have other business on this meeting. Your 3 minutes is up.
As if there's time, as if our children have time. You're delaying the bond, you're shutting down the consortium. What are you doing in this place? Do you have a plan? There is no plan. And for me, that is enraging because I know why. Because we're Black, because many of our students are poor. And that is not okay.
Ms. Gold, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Press that. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed about the lack of Black female leadership now, because we worked hard on that. But I will jump in and say I'm a parent. I went through SLPS from kindergarten, Washington Montessori, graduated from Metro. I am proud of going through that experience. I have emailed you, Natalie, many a times. Alicia, we talked before this. I'm very active, and I will vote continuously and fight for St. Louis Public Schools. Dr. Adams, we interviewed not too long ago for me to work for SLPS. I'm also here to talk about the citywide planning, unfortunately. And what I will say is I actually love your approach. I think it's great. I've been begging for it for years. It has collaboration, a long-term view. But what I want you to ask is who's missing? Who's not at the table? Because when you go on your website right now, it's only people tied to St. Louis City. And there's a lot more. And guess what? It's only people tied to SLPS. There are, 20 separate public schools in the metropolitan area. And we know why people are leaving the city. We're not having conversations with those public schools. At least you're not showing it on the website. There are 35 charter schools. And I send my kid to a neighborhood charter school because of the poor experiences I had that I emailed you about, Natalie, and I didn't hear a response from. And so what I will say is I am committed. I will continue to fight with SLPS. And my kids probably are going to go to high school, maybe if we have any decent high school options that are equitable, because not all of us can test in to CJA. Not all of us can test into McKinley. Not all of us have access to Metro. And there are also other high schools that we need to be focusing on. But what I would say is on May 25th, which is the next date, Ms. Cousins, on June 29th that you have citywide planning? Where are those people at the table? Where are those other people that matter? Because that's your responsibility. I voted for you. I will vote again. And I will continue to show up for my kids, for my community. I don't think I have anything else to say under 3 minutes.
That concludes public comment. Our next item on the agenda is board member reports. The first one is actually a professional development request. We've talked a bit about doing sort of in lieu of a typical board retreat. We're going to, we've talked about doing the board retreat, the MSBA Igniting Ideas Summit, which is June 10th through 12th. It's in St. Charles, so it's close. So I would make a motion to approve a professional development request for all board members to attend the MSBA Igniting Ideas Summit with the possibility for an additional meeting in some forum to be held during that time.
Second.
Ms. Sonier? Ms. Val?
Did you want to discuss?
No.
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next item is committee and board member reports. We'll start with you, Ms. Sonier. You want me to come back to you? Okay. Ms. Cousins.
I'm sorry, I have a report. The citywide plan, we actually have multiple people that we've been meeting with. We actually have sponsorship from the Mizzou entity of charter schools, and we have Confluence Academy. We have SLDC President Marlene Davis that actually is a part of it. We have United Way. We have like a variety of people that we've actually been meeting with to make sure that we do have multiple people at the table with voices that are outside of just SLPS. We have been meeting, and I apologize for the meeting that was canceled because I had COVID. It happens, but we will be having a meeting in June 29th, as the young lady mentioned, and that meeting will be open where we will make sure we're giving reports and providing inputs as to where we are in regards to this process. The goal, again, is to ensure that we're having a citywide plan that will be completed within 14 months of this date. Thank you.
As for the legislative committee, this is the last week of session for the Missouri State Legislature. They were thankfully able to get the budget passed through both houses. The budget was probably one of the most favorable budgets for public education in a long time. That's not saying a lot, but there is a fully funded transportation formula, which will benefit us. There was also some additional line items which will also benefit us. We'll give a fuller report at our next legislative committee meeting, and we'll be monitoring these next couple of days, which should be pretty wild. Ms. Jones.
I don't have a report at this time.
Natalie.
No report at this time.
Alicia, you're back up.
Yeah, I guess really just in response to the citywide planning meeting, Ms. Cousins was sick, and I have a grandmother who is experiencing some serious medical things. So we had to move it virtual. It's not really things that we can plan for or that can attempt. Certainly nobody's wanting to, we had all plans to go, but literally she tested positive, and then I'm vice chair, and I had to go with my grandmother to the hospital. So I couldn't be here, but I do apologize to anybody who was inconvenienced or who was waiting. And obviously when your grandmother is sick, we had the communications to set up a Zoom meeting and other people, but at the top of my mind is not like, I'm focused on my grandmother, but I'm sorry if that inconvenienced anyone. And I hope that you guys who had a lot of questions about the citywide plan go to the website and see some of the updates, because this citywide letter keeps getting mentioned. The things that were asked for in that letter, you hear Ms. Cousins just said the people who have joined the table. So the table is full of stakeholders. The table has expanded. I hope that you will go to the website and you will see that. And there's also a link if you are interested in being a part of some of those work groups that are that are part of that plan as well. So I just hope that you guys utilize that to have that and apologize for that, and also ask for, the grace of life while we're all still like human beings and have to deal with other stuff while this happens.
I don't have any other further reports. So with that, could we get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Ms. Sonier?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
yes.
Ms. Jones?